Hello, this is Elizabeth Perez, and today I will be talking about my philosophy of teaching, theoretical preferences, and collaborative strategies within a school site. First, I would like to mention that I will be citing from the works of Plato, Sousa, Wink and Putney, Goldstein, Paulo Freire, and Vygotsky. My theoretical preferences are made of behaviorism, social constructivism, critical pedagogy, and pragmatism. I found that there is not a magical philosophy that encompasses the needs of all classrooms and students, thus resulting in this multifaceted use of various philosophies. In order to formulate a proper method of collaboration among colleagues, it is important to identify the philosophy of teaching and the theoretical preferences one subscribes to. As a first-year teacher, walking into the classroom with the lens of idealism and enough energy to change the world, devoid of an articulate theoretical framework to guide my teaching, led to a school-year-long battle of self-reflection and questioning of practice. Using education as a tool for student empowerment, maintaining influential theories close and collaborating with the school site is necessary for carrying out the change needed in our communities. By promoting critical thought and independence, students will become thinkers and pursue their goals despite obstacles. There will be no more perpetuation of the banking model of education, which is a depositing knowledge into heads of students, later withdrawing it during a test. Such a curriculum is simply based on memory rather than thought. It is imperative to provide a platform and a safe environment that promotes student expression, manifestation of talents, and communication of perspective. Many students are in need of validation, understanding, and as an educator, it is incumbent upon us to approach students with an open mind and perspective despite our biases. For many students, education is the opportunity to progress both socially and economically. Unfortunately, school values and culture do not always align with that of the student's reality. This causes disengagement, misbehavior, and can eventually lead to the abandonment of education altogether. Educators must understand the plight of students, especially in underserved communities. Only then will we be able to make a difference. Throughout history, education has served as a tool for enlightenment and modernity. Through the dynamic of authority between educator and student, the institution of education has contributed to forced assimilation and conditioning. The institution of education is a powerful structure that can be used to empower or oppress. At times, when educators lack understanding and fail to view the world through the eyes of their students, their bias and cultural standards manifest into subtle and not so subtle forms of conditioning and cultural attack, thus explaining the darker times of colonialism and education. These are just some examples of education being used to oppress and to assimilate. Modern-day educators take pride in obtaining a career that promotes changing young lives for the better. It is important to acknowledge the power we hold as educators and leaders of a classroom full of young minds. Because of this genealogical description of education modernization, I emphasize and urge colleagues to step down from the high horse and stop the perpetuation of the knowing and the know-nots. Our position instills power in us because students and parents trust and believe in us as educators and leaders. Do not use this power structure for assimilation, but rather use it for student empowerment and enlightenment. Creating a community of learners is my main purpose. This will be accomplished by providing students an opportunity for clarity that will allow them to reveal their own path to a future of their own creation. As Jean Piaget once said, education for most people means trying to lead the child to resemble that of a typical adult in society. But for me, education means making creators, inventors, and innovators, end quote. An effective educator must first become familiar with each student, enabling them to embrace and flourish their creative and unique talents. As an educator, it's important to not emphasize authority over students, but rather promote education as a tool for progress. While reviewing and applying multiple theories and philosophies to education, I have come to realize that there is no specific philosophy that can encompass all aspects of education, as previously noted. As an educator, I understand that adults can help children benefit from their experiences through joint construction of meanings. That's a quote by Piaget and Vygotsky. Illustrating positive reinforcement will not only create comfortable and safe learning environment, but it will contribute to the leadership skills and confidence of students. Understanding the various factors involved in the development of students, it's important for parents and community leaders to collaborate together and participate in school activities. It is essential to update parents with not only disciplinary concerns, but also with weekly student progress. Placing value on the identity of the student, I hope to mold my curriculum into meaningful lessons that will withstand time and make an impression on students. This social constructivist idea is one of which I hold dearly. Like Vygotsky, I believe social activities are precursors to and form the basis for complex mental processes, gradually internalizing the arguing process, enabling them to consider multiple perspectives when they think and reason. As teachers, we hold the burden of presenting, explaining, and attaching meaning to the multiple perspectives that exist across subject matters. I find the philosophy of Paulo Freire powerful. He acknowledges the oppression that exists among the lower class in regards of the dominant class, but he demands change. By pulling from these various great thinkers, I've realized it is more important to teach a student how to think than remember bits and pieces of information. That's a quote by Wink and Putney. I find this very true because the alternative would lead to the practice of teaching students to memorize. As an educator, it's important to reduce the amount of lecture and note-taking, but rather enjoy asking questions to your students about topics that are relevant to them. Bringing forth experiences to class and making it applicable to classroom discussions or subject matters is a principle within my instruction. Ways to implement such practices on a wider scale include cooperation, patience, and understanding from both administration and colleagues. But for starters, implementing critical pedagogy is possible in multiple ways. Using students as the central theme of all lesson planning is already a form of critical pedagogy. Empowering the student and letting their voice be heard through use of children's literature, exploration of cultural and social themes, and retelling literature as text for reading, spelling, and grammar allows students to visualize key vocabulary and concepts. Teaching students to be proud of their speech, but also acquiring the mode of formal speech and articulation is important for their success. By asking students, what is another way to say that? And why is this way more appropriate than the other? Is important because it instills long-term learning in the students and allows them to acquire skills that they will use in their adult life. According to Dendry research presented in Diamond and Hobson's article, an engaging environment is key to learning. So along with critical pedagogy, using this engaging environment that I'm about to list will create a full holistic classroom of student engagement. So you're going to use materials that are relevant to the student, and you're going to introduce that material or that curriculum in engaging ways. Now, maintaining a classroom environment with a steady source of emotional support, such as PBIS, a nutritious diet, all sense stimulating, free of undue pressure, challenging social interaction, building on broad range of skills, physical, social, and emotional, independence, assessing the results of their own efforts, promoting exploration, promoting participation rather than passive observation are all different forms of creating an engaging classroom. Now, although my methods in presenting material are more on the social constructivist end of the spectrum, it is important to implement methods of behaviorism for classroom management. A teacher who uses discovery or constructivist approach has very little control over what the students discover and construct. Having a little control over the interpretation of curriculum by a student is a reality. And although this is one of the larger criticisms regarding social constructivist theory, it is actually one of the side effects regarding education in general. No matter what type of philosophy we may abide by, our students hold their own perspective and they have the right to process and digest information by their own means. We cannot control what our students take away from a lesson, but we can try our best to gain an imic perspective and attempt to use their viewpoints to better match the points that we, as educators, are attempting to present. As educators, we must connect with our students and validate their struggles. Only then will our students trust us enough to learn from us. As Plato stated, an instrument of knowledge can only be turned from that world of becoming into the world of being by movement of the soul. And these photos definitely illustrate movement of the soul.